Let's pray together. Our God, as we share these moments, may we know your Spirit's presence. Amen. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang. Thank you. You knew it. I wasn't sure whether you would. But somehow, most of you were born after 1958. And somehow that song has been part of us since then, and we have claimed it as a way to give, well, what? What in the world is that song saying? Of course, it is about a witch, right? And yet that chorus is what we sing. And I wonder, every time I hear it, where in the world did that come from? Now, I do know that Ross Bagdasarian got that somehow from his father. And his father made sure that he knew the song so that his own 1958 wonder and getting rich off of one song, that song could persist. And the son took it, finally got married to somebody. NPR, did anybody hear that interview? Bagdasarian Jr. told about how he took that song from his father and really made the chipmunks come alive. But not before he got married to the woman who he tried to introduce that whole song idea to, and told the Janice, said, "Hey, you know, I want you to be part of my life, but as you're part of my life, it includes this song, and maybe." And she said, "Uh-huh." And she said, eventually, okay, but the okay was really rooted in a kind of commitment to what that song could possibly be in the future. And it meant movies, it meant richness and stardom. Ross became Alvin. She became Theodore. They sped up the sound, and it sounds just like chipmunks, right? How do you know? Have you been outside listening to them recently? They're coming back, I understand, so let's all take a hike. But the question that I'd like to keep in mind is this: where did it come from? What depth of source did that kind of possibility of ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah become part of a song? And out of which depth of the soul did it arise? Now, I love that question, because that question puts us in touch with a searching and maybe a sensitivity of heart and mind that goes deeper inside of ourselves as we wonder how it arises in us that anything has any meaning. To know the why, to know the where of creative thinking, to know the why and the where and feeling and loving and being, which find us entwined with the spirit of the divine that is creative. Ooh, ee. Ooh, ah, ah. Surely it is the same depth that, well, did you get the picture in the bulletin? I love that story too. And I've tried to figure out, what was it like for Adam to sit there on the rock or in the brambles and try to figure out what to call the elephant or what to call snake. And I bet you he did not do it in English, nor in Hebrew. But if there's anything to that story at all, it's not about the hard and fast historical documentation of one person sitting out there in the middle of nowhere taking a name for every animal. It's really all about what it is to allow what is deep within to come in touch with and contact with something beyond ourselves that we find ourselves engaged with, something that we can give a name to and recognize. And let me tell you, we've been doing that since we've been children. Somebody sometimes gives us the name, but we listen very, very carefully to what the names are that people are calling absolutely everything in the world that a child perceives and experiences. The table, the chair, the rug, the this, the that. I was born in a very pivotal year. Pivotal for me. I had no idea at one point, and then everything flooded in. But it's an interesting year, 1945, and some of you remember it in history, and some of you remember it because you were alive when I was born. 1945, the atomic bomb. I've lived with the fact that that's been my part of my existence ever since. But there was something else that happened that year. It happened in December. It happened that there was somebody digging around in a great field nearby a monastery, and they found a jar. And they found a jar that was chock full of a lot of sayings, a lot of writings. It was the Nag Hammadi texts, and they found it. Nobody had ever read those since before 350 in the Common Era, when Athanasius said, get rid of all those documents that have to do with Christian thought and following Jesus that are not the official texts of the church. Can you imagine somebody having the audacity to say that? The great, great parent of all Christendom said it. Get rid of it. Well, it's really very interesting to me that in 1945, those texts were suddenly brought to light. And once those texts came to light, nobody knew what to do with them. They couldn't read them. They had to figure out how the pages worked. And gradually, through the next decades, those pages began to be alive. When I went to seminary, they weren't. But since I've been ministering, they have become very important to me. Why important? Because of this. When you look back at the fact that somebody told the church that these were legitimate and these were not, what do you say if you're a Free Church Baptist? You say, give me those words. I want to find out what they said. I want to know what they were thinking before the canon got firmly established. Why? Because I have a right to know what the Spirit was saying and doing among all these people who called themselves faithful followers of Jesus. And after all, in my Bible classes, I remember we're trying to get back to the earliest Christians. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? The earliest Christians at 350. What about those early Christians of 200? What about those early Christians of 180? And suddenly these words start to come. And we, since 1945, and then having them translated since the 70s, and then into the 80s, and Elaine Pagels and many other scholars started to make them come alive. Today, you had read for you one of those texts. Thunder, perfect mind. And that's only a section from that. But look what happens within that text that is so incredibly important. It's the Spirit speaking. She, Ted, you served so well, speaking the voice of she, the woman who powerfully could recognize that there was something going on. I am the incomprehensible silence, the voice of many sounds, the word in many forms. I am the utterance of my name. Whoa. Okay. Ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah. Now don't laugh too much, because in the same jar was another text for a baptismal rite for the early Egyptians. Can I share it with you? Yeseus, E-O-E-O-U-O-O-U-A, in truth, truly. Living water, child of the child, name of all glories, in truth, truly, eternal being. I-I-I-E-E-E-E-E-O-O-O-O-U-U-U-U-O-O-O-O-A-A-A-A, in truly truth. You think I'm nuts, right? Good. I'm nuts reading that which is basically Christian in Upper Egypt long before Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians were established as the canon. And people of Upper Egypt were moved by a spirit that is not too far from ooh, ee, ooh, ah, ah, ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang. I am here to let you know that you can dive deep within your own soul. It is justified, it is welcome, it is the invitation of what it is to be a person of faith. To know that the Spirit is not something you inherit from a historical past that has grown through the centuries to now, but it is that Spirit that is alive and deep and touches that which is the deepest part of who you are. It is the same place that touched the author of the music. It is the same place that touched the author of that text I read. It is the same that touched Jesus when he went off there on the side, away from the masses, in order to have moments of silence when others weren't bugging him and borrowing his ideas and moving in false directions. It was that silence to which I want to announce it's okay to be there. Adam, when the story goes that he named the animals, went to that place and found the name and gave it. And so when I go back down there and I discover in my way, in our family way, and we gave names to all the animals that became part of us, and we said Fuzzy, Queen Elizabeth, Dante, Persephone, Maggie, or whatever else that animal was, I tapped something in me as I shared that in my community, my wife, my son, and all those who ever dared to come into our home. Education is that. But there's one other thought. I had the privilege to sit with several people, 20, 25 people weekly for a number of weeks, to talk about sin. Oh, man. It was pretty interesting. 7 deadly sins. And we went through and we recognized the names of those and spent a whole session just talking about one at a time. And what was really pretty interesting, as we got to and named wrath, we recognized that wrath was a deep, deep feeling that could be experienced personally. But don't forget the social manifestation of wrath. And what that social manifestation is, it's called war. It's called social hatred. It's called despicable nature and reference of the worthlessness of other human beings, sometimes in mass. They live in some kind of, dare I say it, holes in various parts of the world, according to some. That's hatred. That's wrath. And it's painful to hear. What do you do when you hear that wrath alive? We can go on to sloth, we can go on to gluttony, we can go to pride, envy, greed, and lust, and they're all there. They're all social manifestations of something that can really screw up our world. And what do we do about it? We've named them. We know the names of them. We see them. Here's the other part of this, and it's the capacity that we have not just to name things, but to name the very thing out of which we can respond to those things. That's the other side. And that's the significant part of the whole dynamic of what it is to be not just faithful, but human in relation to other human. Valuing who we are. We can bless children. You know that. But we can also recognize government injustice at the border in relation to children. Can we not? Can we not name that when we see it? We can look at the Second Amendment, and we can call it what it is too. Constitutionally assisted murder for mass children. And people having fun. And people at workplaces. Gone. We can bless the diversity of who we are in religious language. Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Jew, witch, followers of Jesus. And we can also recognize and then counter the curse of bigotry. We can bless racial diversity, but we can also counter the curse of racism. Do you really want me to go on naming? The power is that you have the capacity to name those things too. to recognize them. Now, I'm going to claim that there is that same source for naming the sin as that names ooh-ee, ooh-ah-ah. It is that same part of us that we choose to listen to and recognize things as they are, and we call it as it is. And then we're able to call as it is those very capacities within us to respond to the life that we share with one another. We follow Adam by being able to name. I love the story. To be able to name. But we follow Jesus because his story is a little different. He not only names the difficulties, but he acts in the face of the challenges that are there. And the stories are manifold. Give me the racism of a Samaritan woman, and Jesus sits there and talks with her, right? Give me the repulsion of diseased people, and Jesus goes right there, and the stories are there. He talks with them, touches them, is with them. You got the idea, don't you? You know what I'm talking about. Our faithfulness is not only in naming, it is also in living and responding to. And carrying with us not only the word of recognition of what we see, but also the name of the great act that is ours in love, in peace, and understanding. Let's sing together our next hymn.